Shalom. Welcome. I'm Rabbi Scott with Beth Yeshua Messianic Synagogue. We are here with our midweek Torah portion study. We do these from home, record these from our lovely home, so welcome to our home. A couple of minor notes before we get started, of course, tonight. As always, if you subscribe to our video YouTube channel, then you can get notifications when we release videos and publish videos on the site. That can help you stay up to date and current on what we're doing. We have, at this time, we have our midweek Torah study, which is what this is. And then we also have recently begun our Revelation series. We will be releasing 2 videos per week, 2 teachings per week on the Revelation series. I think there's some 92 episodes to the Revelation series. Rabbi Jim Pickens has taught that series, and so we have re-video mastered those and are releasing them here on our YouTube channel. So we encourage you to join us here for those. Likewise, you will find our Shabbat services are here on this YouTube channel, and you can join us for those as well. We are also open for services if you would like to join us here in Fort Myers. We have our services on Shabbat, Saturday at 11 a.m. The one last item that I have for you is if you are currently supporting this ministry through your donations, we're just very, very grateful for that. And if you would like to support this ministry, you will find a link to do so in the video description below. All right, enough of those matters. I am going to begin with a summary of the Torah portion, and that will involve, let me just get my computer set up here. Vayetchanan. Vayetchanan in Devarim begins in chapter 3. Verse 23. It says, I pleaded with Adonai at that time. Vayetchanan, I pleaded in the Hebrew. This is Moses opening the Parsha, pleading with Adonai to say, O Lord Adonai, can I please cross over and see the good land across the Jordan? So just to set the stage a little bit here, Moses is giving his farewell address, as it were. Some think it lasted over a month there in the plain on the opposite side of the Jordan from the area of Jericho, in that area. And this was a series of speeches or addresses that Moses gave the people of Israel as a sort of farewell letter. And we are in the second parsha of that. And he is reminding them of what Adonai has done for them, where they have been with Adonai, but also how they've ended up here. And he says to them, I pleaded with Adonai at that time, saying, O Lord Adonai, this is chapter 3, please show your servant your greatness and your strong hand. Please let me cross over and see the good land across the Jordan. So effectively, Moses is begging for the privilege of being able to enter into the land. And verse 26 says this, but Adonai was angry with me because of you. So he would not listen to me. Enough, Adonai said to me in the Tree of Life version that we're using. Do not speak to me anymore about this matter. So what we have here is the context is Moses has been asking God, pleading with Adonai for permission to enter the land, and frequently enough, it had become such a complaint that Adonai responded to him, and he was angry with me, and he would not listen to me. Enough, he said to me. Don't speak to me anymore about this. Don't ask me again. Remember when Rav Shaul, Paul, asked the Lord 3 times to remove the thorn, and he said, my grace is sufficient for you in your weakness. Similar to that, but we get a sense of a much more visceral and primitive sort of experience on the part of Moses, where he is begging with Adonai for the privilege of going into the land, and he will not go into the land. Adonai was angry with me because of you, it says here in the context. So rather than that, you're going to commission Joshua. Following that, we have a review of the ordinances and some of the commandments, the statutes, reminders that we are need to be watchful and watch over your soul. Do not forget the things your eyes have seen, the miracles, lest they slip from your heart all the days of your life. You're to make them known to your children and pass them on to your children. The day that you stood before me, Adonai your God, in Horeb, Adonai said to me, gather the people, I'll make them hear my words. You came near, you stood near the bottom of the mountain, while the mountain was blazing with fire, heavens, darkness, cloud, and fog. Adonai spoke to you from the midst of the fire, the sound of the words you heard, but a form you did not see, only a voice. He declared to you his covenant, which he commanded you to do, the 10 words, which is the 10 sayings, which is the 10 commandments. He wrote them on 2 tablets of stone. We have 10 words and 2 tablets. We'll talk about that. Adonai commanded me at that time to teach you statutes and ordinances, so that you might do them in the land you are crossing over to possess. But what jumps out at you already? What's happening here? The people, the audience, the people to whom Moses is speaking right now, they are not the ones who stood at the base of Mount Horeb. That generation has died out in the desert. This is a new generation. This is the children of. And some of the audience listening here would not have been alive. This is 38 and a half years they've been wandering in the desert. Some of the people listening who were in their 30s and 20s would not have even been alive. So what is it that Moses is saying when he says, you came near and stood at the bottom of the mountain? You, Adonai spoke to you from the midst of the fire. You heard the words. And so on. Here's the teaching of it. It is that we have inherited the covenant of Adonai that he made with his people. We have inherited that covenant, and that covenant does apply to us as a people. It is as if we are standing at the base of Mount Horeb, and we are entering into that same covenant with Adonai, and so on. So this is what we see here, that some 3,800 years later, we are still in this same position of accepting the same covenant that that they entered into some 3,500 years ago at Mount Horeb. We likewise are the ones to whom the commandments and the tablets were spoken, and the mitzvot. So we have later in this chapter, this is chapter 4 of Devarim, this is the Torah which Moses set before the children of Israel. These are the testimonies and the statutes and the ordinances which Moses spoke to Bnei Israel when they came out of Egypt, beyond Jordan, in the valley opposite Beth Peor, in the land of Sihon, king of the Amorites, who lived at Heshbon, whom Moses and Bnei Israel struck down when they came out from Egypt. What's happening here? Remember, we had the position of the remember the narrative of the travel log, the idea of this being a sort of travel diary. We talked about that, I think, last week, and here we have this sort of reconnoitering, map reading paragraph. This is the Torah which Moses set before the children of Israel, verse 45. These are the testimonies and statutes Moses spoke to Bnei Israel when they came out of Egypt, beyond the Jordan, in the valley opposite Beth Peor. We're navigating, we're establishing our position on the map. And yet, how did this narrative begin? It began with Moses relaying this story that he had pleaded with Adonai to go into the land, and that didn't happen. Going on with us, again, references to Horeb in chapter 5, and then we have a retelling of the 10 sayings, or the 10 commandments, beginning with, I am Adonai your God, who brought you out from the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage, so on and so on and so forth. And we have here the 10 sayings. These words Adonai spoke in verse 19, to all your assembly on the mountain in the midst of the fire. He added no more. He wrote them on 2 tablets of stone and gave them to me. And then we have a reminder of how the people of Israel didn't want to die from the great words and the powerful voice and the thunder and the fire, and they said, if they hear the voice of Adonai, our God, anymore, we will die. You go near and you listen to all that Adonai says, then you tell us what Adonai, our God, tells you, and we will hear it and do it. I want to say this again, chapter 5, verse 24. You go near and hear all that Adonai, our God, says. Then you tell us what Adonai, our God, tells you, and we will hear it and do it. I'm just going to let that verse just kind of hang in the air for a few minutes. We're going to talk about that. Adonai, next line in the Tree of Life version, Adonai heard the tone of your words when you spoke to me. And Adonai said to me, I have heard the tone of the words that this people has spoken to you. He says, they have done well in all that they have spoken, if only there were such a heart in them to fear me and keep all my mitzvot also, always, so that it might go well with them and their children forever. In other words, yeah, they're right to be afraid. They're right to have a fear of Adonai. If only they had the same fear of Adonai, the same dread, such that they would keep their mitzvot always, that it would go well with them. Adonai says to Moshe, verse 27, return to your tents, but as for you, stand here by me, and I will tell you the whole commandment, both the statutes and the ordinances that you are to teach them, and they will do in the them in the land I'm giving them to possess. Well, let's continue on. We've got a couple more chapters to summarize here. Chapter 6, moving on. Again, a reminder, verse 2, that you might fear Adonai your God. And then the Shema, of course, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one, which is chapter 6, verse 4, Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. And then love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your strength. The Ve'ahavta following it. This comes out of our liturgy, and we say this every week in our services, and many traditional people will say this every day and as part of their prayers. And then we continue on. You need to watch yourself so that you don't forget Adonai. You must fear him and serve him and swear by his name. You must not go after other gods. Adonai, your God, in the midst of you is a jealous God. Otherwise, the anger of Adonai, your God, will be kindled against you, and he will wipe you from the face of the earth. And then verse 20, when your son asks you in time to come, saying, what are the testimonies and the statutes and the ordinances? Then you are to tell your son, when we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, Adonai brought us out from Egypt with a mighty hand. Before our eyes, Adonai showed signs and wonders, great and terrible, on Egypt, on Pharaoh, and on all his house. Then he brought us out here so that he might bring us in to give us the land that he swore to our fathers, giving us again all these commandments, statutes. It will be righteousness to us if we take care to do all these commandments before Adonai our God, just as he has commanded us. Again, it's important to not lose our place with the Torah. The Torah is very complex and is the foundation of salvation. It is the treatise of Yeshua. It is his identity and personality woven into it. That's why our logo, the Beth Yeshua Messianic Synagogue logo, is a Torah scroll with the word Yeshua emblazoned across it, because Yeshua is in the Torah. But it's more than that. It's righteousness to them that keep it. And I think that we need to be reminded of that there is a righteousness to obeying the covenant of Adonai. A couple of things about the native peoples, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, etc., the people who are dwelling in the land, that they are not to intermarry. And then this line here, verse 7 from chapter 7, Devarim, Deuteronomy, it is not because you are more numerous than all the peoples that Adonai set his love on you and chose you, for you are the least of all peoples. Rather, because of his love for you and keeping the oath he swore to your fathers, Adonai brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you from the house of slavery, from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Know therefore that Adonai is your God. He is God, the faithful God, who keeps covenant kindness for 1,000 generations with those who love him, and keeps his mitzvot, but repays those who hate him to their face to annihilate them. He will not hesitate with him who hates him. He will repay him to his face. Therefore you are to keep the commandment, both the statute and the ordinances that I am commanding you today, to do them. All right, that may be the conclusion, or working our way towards a conclusion to perhaps the first address by Moses to the people, perhaps the first or second address. All right. So where do we want to go with this this week? I have a couple things. I want to speak to you, first of all, on the 10 sayings, the 10 commandments. When we refer to the 10 commandments, we refer to these commandments. We celebrate them in our culture. They're revered in Western society. Up until very recently in our country, you'd find the 10 Commandments commemoratives and memoriams in courthouses and so forth. We're finding less of that these days because our culture has gone significantly antagonistic towards the things of Adonai. But it isn't too far in the past history that we did see the 10 Commandments posted in various and assorted public places, schools, etc. All right, but when do we really refer to them in daily life? When was the last time you thought to yourself, "Oh, wait, do not murder"? Okay, let's just to make sure I'm reminded of that, or wait, the 10 Commandments tell me to honor my father and mother. I just almost forgot. I need to be reminded of that. It's interesting how something so foundational, we don't really have a practical connection to it. We tend to it tends to exist over here kind of as an overarching thematic element to our lives, as opposed to something very practical and relevant on a daily basis. Yeshua, when he defended the Torah, Matthew chapter 5, he chose two of the commandments to mention. He said, "You have heard it said," which of course is a reference back to the 10 sayings. "You have heard it said," he says, choose two of the 10. You have heard it said, you shall not commit murder. And the point that I've made before is, out of any given crowd, murder is probably one of the least likely sins you're going to find in that crowd. I mean, truthfully, in our congregation, as I preach to our congregation, I doubt anybody there is dealing with murder, and yet Yeshua showed that by understanding what murder was, we realize that this commandment does have immediate applicability to all of us. Likewise with adultery. Relationships are where we start from, and relationships are both the origin of us and the destination or the purpose of us. Origin is kind of the relationship is kind of our origin moment, and that's why we were created. We were created to be in relationship, and our purpose is to be in relationship. I want to introduce relationships as a template with which to view the 10 Commandments. There are different structures apparent in the 10 Commandments. If you study the 10 Commandments out, you're going to find there's a number of ways to analyze them, a number of different templates or structures that you can use to analyze the 10 Commandments and kind of bring some insight to it. The one that I'm looking at today is from a relational aspect. There are 2 tablets, groups of 5 commandments on each tablet. Total of 5, 10 commandments total, 5 going in 2 directions. And as we study these, we see a sense of these commandments having a sort of a polarization from 1 through 5, of course, and 6 through 10. And I will go ahead and try to pull these up here on my screen. and we'll use the Devarim version of the Ten Commandments because that's in the current portion. So that's what we'll start with today. I am Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage. If you're from the Christian background, there's a slight variation, a distinction, difference between the rendering of the counting, if you will, of the Ten Commandments. It has to do with where the verses line up and how the Ten Commandments are kind of distinguished. But I'm going to be reading from the Tree of Life version. So the first commandment is, I am Adonai your God. And we understand Ani Adonai, I am Adonai, Ani Adonai Ha-Elohim, I am Adonai your God, here in this passage. And that would be the first commandment, and then we want to find the parallel to that on the second tablet, if we're assuming 5 commandments on each tablet, 2 tablets total. So let's go look for number 6, and we see that we end up with do not murder. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Do not murder is the 6th commandment. And so if we were to then go forward from there, we would say, do not make yourself a graven image. Commandment against idolatry, number 2. And then the corresponding number 7, do not commit adultery. Number 3, you must not take the name of Adonai your God in vain. Number 8, corresponding, do not steal. Number 4, you must keep the Shabbat. 6 days you are to labor and do all your work. And then number 9 would be, do not bear false witness. Number 5 is you are to honor your father and mother, just as Adonai your God commanded you. And then number 10 is, do not covet your neighbor's wife, neighbor's house, his field, his manservant, maidservant, his ox, his donkey, or anything else that belongs to your neighbor. Okay, so that's kind of a brief outline or summary of splitting the commandments in half and then lining them up corresponding 1 to 6 and 2 to 7, etc. So we end up with the first one, I am Adonai your God, versus compared with humans created in the image with murder. Thou shalt not murder. Humans were created in the image of God. And so to murder is the closest thing that we can get to actually laying hands on God. For Adonai to say to us, I am Adonai your God, is a statement of his existentiality. It is a fundamental statement of who he is. He just is. And murder is the closest thing we can get to eliminating someone. My brother is, or another person is. When one person goes and murders another, he chooses to make them not. They disappear from life. They disappear from being an impact and effect upon us. In a very spiritual sense, they truly disappear. So we have this, I am the Lord your God, a statement of Adonai's existentiality, of his existence. Compare that with thou shalt not murder, and murder would be to eliminate eliminate another human being. To transgress the commandment, I am the Lord your God, would be to eliminate God. Would be to say, well, there is no God. It's the closest thing we can get to murdering or eliminating God. So we see these 2 commandments line up and refer to kind of a similar principle here. One is referring to the I am the Lord your God, is referring, of course, to Adonai, and then the other one is humans being created in the image of God that we would murder, is more of a horizontal versus vertical sort of understanding. All right. Temptation for murder always begins with this phrase, I think my life would be better off without. Temptation to expunge God, to remove him. I think my life would be better off without. My life would be better off without my neighbor. My life would be better off without God. It's an indifference to God or an antagonism to God. The opposite of that, of course, being I am the Lord your God, and to remember that and to keep that. Essentially, murder is a failure to love your brother. And that may seem obvious, but I wanted to just leave that out there in the atmosphere for a little bit, and we'll come back to that. All right, let's skip to the next pair. Again, what we're doing is we're comparing, say, the two tablets left and right, and we're saying 1 matches up to 6 and 2 matches up to 7. So the next one that we have in the list here is, you shall have no other gods, do not make for yourself a graven image, no image of what is in the heavens, etc., etc. Commandment number 2. And then commandment number 7, which says, do not commit adultery. There is a connection between idolatry and adultery. In fact, it's spoken about extensively in the Nevi'im, the prophet books of the Tanakh. This idea that there is a deep, sacred, binding relationship that is injured and compromised in adultery, that marriage is not the marriage is not extinguished or killed effectively, legally, by adultery, but it is deeply injured, and usually divorce is the only result from adultery because the marriage is injured deeply. But what I want to bring to attention is that it's not, it's injured, it's compromised. In a sense, what you to me, she is set aside to the marriage. She is holy unto me and holy unto the marriage. And for me to take somebody else is to mix something profane with what is holy. In the same way, our God is to be worshipped, who is mighty and holy and awesome. To take idolatry is to mix the profane with the holy. All right, let's continue on in our little analysis of this. You must not take the name of Adonai your God in vain. Don't take the Lord's name in vain. Versus don't steal. Thou shalt not steal. Do not steal. The Hebrew take on this, the Hebrew word on this take is lotisa, which means to lift up or to carry off, like you were carrying off Adonai's name. To steal from someone is to carry off a portion of their identity. In many cases, if a person's house gets robbed, what do they feel? Or your car gets broken into, what do you feel? You feel you've been violated. You feel like your space has been invaded. And we have this word picture in the Hebrew to lift up and to carry off. To take Adonai's name in vain is to carry off a portion of what he is, to take it away. To steal from somebody is to carry off some of their identity. Interesting, the sages speak about this, interpret this as do not kidnap. In both cases, taking from someone, taking away the power and the truth, the identity of the name of God, taking away the possessions and identity of a person. Again, we have what some people describe as a vertical and horizontal sort of aspect to, say, tablet 1 and tablet 2 of the commandments. The name of Adonai in the world, in the earth, is a kind of possession. It's a kind of something that he owns. It is something that belongs to him, and we refer to him. But a good name is something that is chosen, Proverbs tells us, and the name of Adonai is something that he holds on to. And for us to take his name in vain is to, in a sense, carry that off and take it away from him, to violate him in that sense. Continuing on with our survey here, honor the Shabbat and keep it holy. Verse 12 in this translation, observe Yom Shabbat to keep it holy, as Adonai your God commanded you. 6 days you are to labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Shabbat to Adonai your God. In it you are not to do any work. Okay, and then that would be number 4, and we are comparing number 4 with number 9. Number 9 is don't bear false witness against your neighbor. So what do we say about this? Shabbat is an expression. Where does the Shabbat come from? Shabbat is an expression of the completion of the creation of the world. Shabbat is an expression of an accomplishment, acknowledgement that things are finished. The creative accomplishment of salvation in Yeshua is represented by the Shabbat. It is finished. To bear false witness is to slander what somebody else has done. So say I had a job to do, and I went and I did my job, and it's finished, and now I've completed that job, and I can move on to something else. But if somebody else speaks of my job, and they say, well, Rabbi Scott didn't finish that project. He didn't finish that. If I had indeed actually finished it, that would be a form of slander, of false witness. Do you see what's happening there? At the end of creation, what was the worst thing that you could say of God? At the end of creation week, what would be the worst accusation, the worst slanderous thing that you could say of Adonai? It would be to say it's not good, right? It was complete and it was good. To say it's not good means it's not complete. You still have work to do. I mean, that's the essence of it. Everything was good in its moment and its time throughout the week of creation, and then at the end of creation, it was all very good. It was all very complete because it was all good. It was all good because it was complete. It could not have been good if it wasn't complete. So to dishonor the Shabbat is an expression of the slander of is an expression of slander of creation. In a sense, to slander the Shabbat is to dishonor the Shabbat. To do something on the Shabbat is to say that the week isn't done, which, since Adonai created the Shabbat to be a reflection of the creation that was done, it becomes a slander. Do you see that? If I do work on Shabbat, then effectively what I'm saying is that my week wasn't done. I had more work to do. Adonai has created the Shabbat to be a reflection of his work that was done, and his work was completed. Therefore, that Saturday, that day of the week, is that day set aside for him. And all creation knows this. That is the Shabbat. It is his day. It is his appointed day. When we speak of the Moedim, the appointed times, the first one that is spoken of is the Shabbat. It is the seventh day, the day of rest. And that day is set aside to be a spiritual marker of the completion of creation. And for me to disregard that and then go do work on the Shabbat, however that wants to be defined, and we can talk about that if you like, it dishonors the work that Adonai did during the creation week. But let me extend this a little bit further and make this even more real for you. The accomplished work of Yeshua is a Shabbat of our salvation. Our salvation is an accomplished work. Our atonement in Yeshua is an accomplished work. If you've accepted the atonement of Yeshua as the atonement of your soul, as a satisfaction and a completion of the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world, the sacrifice lamb, the Yom Kippur sacrifice, the atonement sacrifice, even the Paschal Lamb sacrifice that brought about new life, that the angel of death passed over. If you have accepted this Mashiach, if you have accepted Yeshua, that atonement is a completed work. We honor and we memorialize that atonement when we celebrate the Pesach. We honor and we memorialize that atonement when we celebrate Yom Kippur. But guess what? We also honor and memorialize that Shabbat, that atonement, that salvation, every week on the Shabbat. That it is a completed work. His salvation is a completed work. For me to, on the one hand, accept the atonement and the completion of that atonement represented by the Shabbat, but then to go out and mow my lawn on the Shabbat, it dishonors the work that was completed. There is a real sense that Yeshua, having completed his work, the text says, he sat down at the right hand of the Father. He sat down because the work was completed. Okay, so this is where we have numbers 4 and 9, honor the Shabbat, and then don't bear false witness. Again, we have this principle of vertical and horizontal. Now we come to number 5 and number 10. First, honor your father and mother versus do not covet. Do not covet. What's interesting about the text here, let's look at this in the text. Do not covet your neighbor's wife. Okay, that's good. I don't want to covet my neighbor's wife. Could have made it simple. When it said do not murder, notice that when it says do not murder, it says do not murder your neighbor or your cousin or your... It doesn't say that. It just says do not murder, period. When it says do not steal, it doesn't say do not steal from your neighbor, from your cousin, from your companion, from your business partner, from the foreigner, from the ger, from the alien. It doesn't say that. It just says do not steal. So why does it say in the 10th commandment, do not covet, and then follows it up with your neighbor's wife, nor your neighbor's house, his field, his manservant, his maidservant, his ox, his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor? Why the checklist of things not to covet? Well, we know for certain that it's not a limited list. In other words, these are the things you are not allowed to covet, but I can covet my neighbor's pickup because it wasn't listed here in this list. I can covet my neighbor's boat because it's not listed in the list. That's not what's happening here. What's happening here is it says do not covet these things. The text is drawing attention to the fact that if you struggle with coveting, and I think all of us can at one time or another, and this is just the nature of it, but if you struggle with coveting, it's never enough to covet just your neighbor's television, right? We got these big televisions. Some people have really big televisions in their homes. If you really have a problem with your neighbor's television, you just really want that television, and you're just not happy because you want his television, and you go to your counselor or your therapist and you say, I'm having a problem. I want Chuck's television, and I just can't get it out of my mind. I really want his Chuck. I really want his television. And your therapist, who is hopefully very wise, says to you, okay, well, what would happen to you if I were to go get Chuck's television and put it in your living room? Would you be happy? Be honest. Would you really be happy? Or would it be something else? Would it be your neighbor's pool table? Or would it be your neighbor's patio, barbecue? Do you see? Coveting is one of those things that doesn't stop. It just keeps going and going and going. And I want to give a little credit here to... I want to give credit here to Rabbi David Foreman. There was a movie that came out a while ago, The Talented Mr. Ripley, and in it, I think that the actor was Matt Damon. He started out coveting, and he ended up murdering because, here's what it was, he didn't just want the things that the person had, he wanted to be that person. See, the ultimate trajectory of coveting is to actually be the person that you're coveting from. This is the nature of it. It's not just do not covet this and this and this. It's the person who covets wants to end up being that person. Where do we come from? We come from our father and our mother. They're the ones who give us our identity. They give us who we are. Our identity, our life, our personality, character. Very much of what we are, comes from our father and our mother. Ultimately, if I'm dissatisfied with who I am, if I want to be somebody else, I don't want to be myself. I want to be my neighbor because my neighbor has this and this and this and this. Ultimately, I just want to be that person. Ultimately, what that is that's a form of dishonoring, a form of slandering your father and your mother. Coveting is a revealed expression. It reveals resentment of parents. I don't like what you gave me. I don't like what you made me. I want to be something else. I want to be someone else. And this is the nature of coveting. This is kind of the expression of coveting. And that's why these two commandments are linked. Once again, honor your father and mother, where you came from, and thou shalt not covet your neighbor's possessions, wife, house, field, manservant, maidservant, etc. So what's the summary here with the Ten Commandments? What's happening? If you analyze it the way that we have today, we end up with this sort of framework, if you will, of comparison, drawing out these principles. What's the overarching principle that we're looking at? Well, the overarching principle is love. Unfortunately, love is the only way to satisfy everything that's going on in the Ten Commandments. And that love, thou shalt love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. This love is what is required in order to satisfy these Ten Commandments. This love is what is required in order to satisfy the commandments that apply to other people. In a sense, it's love that allows me to celebrate my neighbor's new boat or new truck. It's love that allows me to celebrate what somebody has that I may otherwise want for myself. And that's where we end up. We end up with a teaching on love from the Ten Commandments. All right, we're going to develop that a little bit more perhaps this week at Synagogue. So if you're going to be here this week, then you can tune into that, and we'll address that further. I don't really know how much time I have, so at the risk of going long today, I do have some other things that I wanted to cover. So if you would like to, if you consider that to be a good portion, a good mouthful this morning or this evening, then you are free to ring off now. If you'd like to stay on, we're going to take another bite at the Parsha, and I want to talk about this in a little bit further detail. So the next chapter of what I wanted to look at today is this question of why Moses can't go into the land. And we've talked about this from a lot of different perspectives, but it figures prominently in what's happening here in this parsha. And so, since the Torah is going to bring it back up, we're going to go after it again as well. So the question is, why can't Moses go into the land? And every time we talk about this, we do draw in some different perspectives on it and some different ideas. So I think this will be a good discussion for you, even if you've heard me talk about it before. So the question, why can't Moses go into the land? And the answer is because he struck the rock. But here it says in the text, going back, let's pull back to that. Let's see, all the way back chapter 3, the beginning of the Parsha, verse 23. I pleaded with Adonai at that time, verse 26, but Adonai was angry with me because of you. The reason that Moses wasn't going to go into the land is because he struck the rock. He struck the rock, but here it says that Adonai was angry at me on account of you. So some of this credit, of course, goes to Rabbi David Foreman and their research team. If you're familiar with intertextuality or interested in intertextuality, it's just a very fun and effective way to study Torah. And no one packages intertextuality as well as Rabbi David Foreman. He does a brilliant job of it. So that's where you're going to see some echoes of what they teach on this in this discussion. Moses brought the people of Israel out of slavery. He brings them into the wilderness of Sinai. But first along the way, coming out of Egypt, we have the attack by Pharaoh at the Sea of Reeds. It wasn't enough that the plague of the firstborn, but Pharaoh has to double down on his animus and hatred, and he attacks them when they're backed up to the Sea of Reeds. And they go across the Sea of Reeds, the sea is split by Adonai, and Pharaoh and all his horse and his riders are tumble into the sea, and they drown in the sea. But we have this attack. It's a near-death experience, we have to be honest. Shortly after that, we have crisis of food, which results in manna. We have a crisis of waters of Meribah, and then we're attacked by the Amalekites. By the time they arrive at Sinai, they've been through it. They've been a little beat up. They've been a little frightened. We have four daughters in our family, four daughters from age 20 to age 16. The three oldest are either working or are at two different universities, one up in Georgia and one over on the east coast of Florida. The first year that they went to university, they were optimistic, a little bit of a trepidation, of course, but they were optimistic. They can handle it. They've got this. And now we're beginning our second year. And the various mistakes that young people make this last year, for all of them, has led to, a real, not a crisis, but certainly a good bit of anxiety. Can I do this? Am I really going to be able to do this? Because, wow, when I make a mistake, it's really painful. And they've all had to kind of to realize that. My son has a bicycle, has training wheels on his bicycle. When he takes the training wheels off, he's free. He can go so fast. It's liberation. He's free, finally free, until he takes a tumble. And then when he gets up, he's a different sort of person, because now we realize what's in the balance. Remember, Israel was crying out for their desperate condition under slavery. Adonai heard their cries, but we don't see in the text that they were really crying out to Adonai. We just heard that they were crying out to him, or crying out for deliverance. Or it could even be understood that perhaps they were just crying because things were desperate for them. There is a sense of disconnection here. The people of Israel, the children of Jacob, weren't asking for Adonai to deliver them. They weren't negotiating with Pharaoh. They weren't trying to defend themselves. Moses is the only one who took up arms, and look where that went. So in a sense, what you see is they were a beaten people. They were a defeated people. It's almost as if they were involuntarily delivered, in a sense. That when Moses is declared the leader, the prophet, remember all the hesitation that Moses had when he was called by the burning bush, by Adonai. He said, "Whom shall I say sends me?" As if I got a burning bush, but they're not going to have anything. How am I going to convince these people that you are good and that you are God? Remember, the two main questions for every person is to answer, is God in control and is God good? They weren't even to the place where they could even verbalize or formulate that question in their mind. So they're set free. But here's my theory. I think that freedom came at a psychological cost. I think their freedom came along with a real vulnerability. We see them huddled and gathered around Moses, who's teaching them the law all day long, who taught them about Adonai. This is prior to Sinai. So we ask the question, where did Moses get all of his knowledge? How did he know so much? Did he learn it as a child when he grew up in Pharaoh's house? Not likely. Did he learn it as a shepherd under Jethro and Midian? No, not likely. Did he learn it in his battle with Pharaoh? Probably somewhat. Where does Moses get the understanding in order to teach the people the law all day long from sunup till sundown? In some cases in our nation's history, we had schools on the prairie in these little prairie towns, and oftentimes it would be a young lady who would be named the teacher, and sometimes she had little or no preparation or training. Oftentimes she would take the textbook and she would learn the lesson the night before, and then the next day she would teach the lesson to their children. Most of us have read stories like this. In a sense, I wonder if that's the nature of what Moses is doing here. It's on-the-job training, understanding Adonai as he did principally, but these people are clinging to him. Moses is thrust into the Father, King, God, Messiah, Shepherd role with all these people, and the people are clinging to him. Then when Moses is up on the mountain too long, the people get restless and they create the golden calf. The story that the sages teach is a fanciful and crazy story, and it's not in the text, but it illustrates some of the dynamic that's happening here. The story they tell is that the Hasatan, the Satan, showed the people of Israel a picture of the dead Moses. And that's why they created the golden calf. And that's why they said, behold the God who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. Why did they say, the God who brought you up out of the land of Egypt? What were they replacing? They were replacing Moses with the golden calf. They said, behold the God who brought you up out of the land of Egypt, because they had just replaced Moses, the God who brought them up out of the land of Egypt. It was a God for a God. They saw Moses as a God-type figure. Like I said, he's Father, King, God, Messiah, Shepherd with these people. So, Moses was embattled by his people. It's not unlike a single father, or it's not unlike a father whose wife has passed away and he's left with the children. And all of a sudden he has to be instant father and mother to these children. The people of Israel were dysfunctional, they were ignorant, they were clingy, they were needy, they were afraid. So we have this. Miriam is somehow associated with wells and springs, and Miriam dies. Aaron is going to die soon, and Moses has to see the trajectory of the 40 years wandering in the wilderness. And it's about time to turn to enter the land, and this is when Miriam dies, and the people become restless about the water. When does Moses learn that he was not going into the land? After the episode of the rock, when he didn't show Adonai the glory and respect and the honor, show Adonai as holy to all the people. But in any case, Miriam passes, there's no water, and Moses is told to take the staff and go speak to the rock. The staff is reminiscent of the shepherd. The shepherd is a thankless, nurturing job. He's told to speak to the rock, to draw forth with words the water that was bound up in the rock. Moses is going to speak the words that bring life out of the people, the same as he's going to speak words that bring water from the rock. But in this context, Moses is more in the position or description of a wet nurse, a resentful wet nurse, than he is of a spiritual paragon. Look at some of these comments by Moses. Look at Numbers 11. Let me try to find that here. I will see if I can get it on your screen. Maybe not. Technology. We do love it when it works. Numbers 11. Okay, Numbers 11, and you can follow along if you like, if it shows up well enough on your screen. We see that this is the episode of the people who are complaining. They're complaining about not having meat. And Moses heard the people wailing by their families. Verse 10, each man at the door to his tent. Adonai's anger became very hot, and Moses was troubled. So Moses asked Adonai, verse 11, and this is, of course, of Numbers 11, Bamidbar number 11. Verse 11, why have you, and this is Moses speaking to Adonai, why have you brought trouble on your servant? Haven't I found favor in your eyes that you laid the burden of all these people on me? Did I conceive? There's that language, conceive all these people. Did I give birth to them that you should say to me, carry them in your bosom, just as the nurse carries an infant? Where can I get meat for all these people? They wail to me, saying, give us meat to eat. I am not able to carry all these people by myself. The load is too heavy for me. What a loud complaint. If this is how you're treating me, kill me now. If I have found favor in your eyes, kill me, please. Don't let me see my own misery. What a loud and miserable statement to say that Moses is saying here. This is the context, if you will, of Moses. It's reminiscent of a sense of his humanity. Basically, he's a human being. He's a normal human being, and there's cracks in the visage, if you will. When it comes time to draw water from the rocks, we have this. If you turn ahead to Numbers 20, that was Numbers 11, so we'll go to 20. And he says, he took the staff from the presence of Adonai, and he turns and he gathers the assembly in front of the rock, and he says, "Listen now, you rebels, must we bring you water from this rock?" And he turns and he strikes the rock twice with his staff. We've talked about this in recent weeks. Adonai is giving Moses instructions to speak to the rock. What do we know of Adonai? Adonai is different. He's holy. He carries his children in his bosom. He doesn't get angry or impatient with them. He's long-suffering, especially for them that love him, which means that your heart is right and your desire is to do good. He doesn't get impatient with them like an overabused wet nurse. Moses did get angry and acted like an overused wet nurse here. "Listen to me, you rebels. Can you get any more out of me? Can you take any more? In other words, you expect me to bring water from this rock? What more can you ask of me? Not without breaking the rock. You're going to break me." And so he strikes the rock with his staff twice, and it breaks. For this, Adonai says, "You did not treat me as holy. I am holy. I am separate. You blurred the lines between me and you. You blurred the lines and misrepresented me. As you, in your impatience and your exhaustion, we did not represent Adonai in his patience and his faithfulness and his long-suffering." And that's what he means when he says, "You didn't treat me as holy." Therefore, going back to Devarim, therefore we have this. Adonai was angry with me, and so he said, "Enough. Do not speak to me any more about this matter. And go to the top of Pisgah and look around to the west and north and south and east and see with your eyes, for you will not cross over the Jordan." That's the therefore. That's the conclusion of the matter. And then we have this, skipping forward, if you will, to Devarim, chapter 34. So Moses went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, which is opposite Jericho. Adonai showed him all the land, Gilead to Dan, and all of Naphtali, the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah as far as the west of Jericho, the city of palm trees as far as Zoar. Then Adonai said to him, "This is the land that I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, I will give it to your seed. I will let you see it with your eyes, but you will not cross over there." So, once again, the conclusion of the Torah is this Moses who is breathed his last here at the end of Devarim, at the end of Deuteronomy. And so it says there in verse 5, chapter 34, "Moses, the servant of Adonai, died there in the land of Moab, as was from the mouth of Adonai. Then he, that is Adonai, buried him in the valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor. But no one knows of his burial place to this day. Moses was 120 years old when he died. His eye was not dim, nor his vigor gone. Bnei Israel wept for Moses in the plains of Moab 30 days. Then the days of weeping and mourning for Moses were ended." Now, why do you think we have this line here? No one knows of his burial place. Why was it that Adonai buried Moses? We certainly know that where Aaron was buried, Moses was there, and Aaron's son was there when Aaron breathed his last. We know where Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were buried. Joseph likewise. We at least at some time in history we knew these things. Why is it that no one knows Moses' burial place even to this day? Well, we have a clue, which is really fascinating. A clue in the book of Jude, in the Brit Hadashah, So if you'll turn there with me, please, Jude. Okay. And in Jude, we have this, verse 20 and 21. Let's see, where is it here? Actually, not verse 20 and 21. Rather, let's look up here, verse 8. Verse 9 of Jude. When Michael the archangel, disputing with the devil, was arguing about the body of Moses, he did not dare render a judgment against him for slander, but said, "May the Lord rebuke you." Now, what is happening here? It says by tangential reference that Michael the archangel is disputing with the devil, arguing about the body of Moses. What do they have to argue about? Why was Michael defending the body of Moses? Why was it necessary that the body of Moses not be known where it was buried? And this is why, this is my conjecture, this is my my reading of the text. Turn over, if you will, to Revelation 11. And you'll see this. Chapter 11 of Revelation in the Brit Hadashah, verse 3, I will grant authority to my 2 witnesses, and they'll prophesy for 1,260 days, dressed in sackcloth. These are the 2 olive trees and the 2 menorot, who are standing before the Lord of the earth. If anyone wishes to harm them, fire comes out of their mouths and consumes their enemies. If you want to look this up, look up the olive tree and the menorah prophecy. I think it's in Hezekiah or Malachi, one of the 2. If anyone wants to harm them, he must be killed in this way. These 2 have the power to shut the heavens so that no rain may fall during their days of prophesying. They have the power over the waters to turn them into blood and to strike the earth with every kind of plague as often as they wish. When they have finished their testimony, which is 1,260 days, the beast that rises from the abyss will make war on them and overcome them and kill them. Okay. So, and their corpses will lie in the open street of the great city. After 3.5 days, the breath of life from God entered them. They stood up on their feet. A great fear fell on those who were watching them. They heard a loud voice from heaven saying, "Come up here," and they went up into heaven in a cloud. All right, so that's what I see happening here. The description of the 2 witnesses, one of them turns water into blood. Well, we know that Moses was active turning water into blood in the confrontation of Pharaoh. We know that Elijah, that fire came down and destroyed Elijah's enemies in 2 Kings chapter 1, when fire came down to destroy those who went in Malachi 4, we have the prophecy of the return of Elijah. Yeshua echoes this when he says that Elijah will certainly come in chapter 17 of Matthew. In Devarim, chapter 18, Deuteronomy, we have Adonai's promise to raise up a prophet like Moses. So why did the Hasatan try to take the body of Moses? There's no reason or understanding for this, unless it might be possibly to sabotage the prophecy. There's no reason to hide the body of Moses unless perhaps it's to sabotage the prophecy. How can the 2 witnesses come if the Hasatan is holding the body of Moses? And then we have this Talmudic reference to the story of the Hasatan showing a picture of Moses dead up on the mountain. So in these days, which are also a precursor to the return of Yeshua, and we ask ourselves the question, where is Elijah? Where is Moses? They are being prepared. From whom shall they come? They shall come from Adonai Elohim, who will come in the breath and the fire of the Ruach, come to over the surface of the chaos that we have created in this world. And it is indeed a true chaos that we are living in these days. Once again, Adonai will have victory over his enemies. Of this there is just absolutely no question. And the two witnesses, of which one is certainly most likely Moses. And we see that the plan of Moses to be the witness at the end of times, if that truly does turn out to be, then that has been something that has been reserved from the beginning, when Adonai kept the body of Moses for himself and buried Moses himself in order to preserve him and hide him away until the opportune time. As we've been saying in our community recently, we are certainly in these days, and what we really just look ahead is to the appearance of Yeshua. The final words of the matter from the Revelation chapter 22. The Ruach and the bride say, come. The Spirit and the bride say, come. And let the one who hears say, come. Let the thirsty one come. Let the one who wishes freely take from the water of life, from the Revelation. And the one giving testimony, that is Yeshua himself, to these things says, yes, I am coming soon. Amen. Come, Lord Yeshua. May the grace of Yeshua HaMashiach, our Lord, be with all of you also, as it says here in the text of the Revelation chapter 22. Thank you so much for joining me in this Torah study. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. You can contact me through the comments on the YouTube channel, or if you want to have a private discussion, just reach out to us. There's a number of ways to get a hold of us on the website or through Facebook or through the YouTube channel. Once again, may Adonai keep you this week. May he keep you safe. And if you need anything, please let us know. And we will look forward to a grand reunion, either when we're all able to fellowship together in fullness, either here in one of our services, or perhaps when we sit down to that final moment in the beginning of eternity, when everything is made new and everything is made complete, and we enter into that Shabbat rest. So in any case, I look forward to seeing all of you, and just may the grace of God and his love guide you as you go. Shalom, shalom.